Hello and welcome to the Esports Biz Show. I'm your host, Justin Jacobson. This week we'll be discussing gaming content creators and journalists. Just a disclaimer, nothing here is intended as legal advice. It's all the information is for educational purposes only. This week's guest is Lord Cognito. He's a co-host of the Iron Lords podcast, part of the Lords of Gaming Network, and a veteran gaming journalist and content creator. Thanks for joining us.
Lord Justin, I'm in the realm, man. Thanks for having me. This is much appreciated, man. Good to be here. Excited to talk games and the whole bit, man. Always a pleasure to see you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. We're switching the mic. Last time I've been on your show. Now you're coming here. So it's exciting. So start by introducing yourself. Tell everybody about your past gaming experience. What was the first game you played and how'd you get involved in the gaming industry?
Yeah, man. So Lord Cognito, originally a kid from the South Bronx, not too far from Yankee Stadium, and had a huge passion for gaming. Shout out to Mama Cognito, because if it wasn't for her putting up with my gaming passion and nonsense and having like 12, 13 kids from the South Bronx all piled up in my house to play video games. So she dealt with a lot. But, the argument at the time where I went over was kind of like, hey, you don't like me in the street.
Safer here at home.
And you know where I am, right?
Exactly.
But as far as, gaming, yeah, man, I always had a passion. I also want to shout out my dad because he was the one that kind of took me to my first arcade. And I think for me, probably the first game that resonated, that kind of changed my life was this game called Shinobi. It was in the arcade. It was made by Sega. It was upright. It was the 80s ninja craze. And it was in like a local arcade, and I saw it, and I was just mesmerized by the lights, the thing. And then we're talking about, kung fu flicks and stuff. So it was just a perfect time. And when I saw that, I'm like, I love it. I want to own that. I want to have that. And then the passion for gaming just really took off at that point.
Amazing. So tell us about the Lords of Gaming Network. What is it and why was it created?
Yeah, so Lords of Gaming Network is kind of a combination of two things. It's Iron Lords Podcast LLC, which is pretty much myself and three other lifelong friends. We sit there, we talk about video games, and we kind of just talk about the gaming industry in general, basically trends and things that's happening. And then there's lordsofgaming.com, which is our media site. That's where we pretty much kind of like an independent website where we interview as well. We also talk about, go to conventions. We also talk about also topical topics, and we have writers, editorial team, the whole bit. And that kind of like legitimizes us in the space.
So it's like a media publication.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So I know we kind of talk about, the Iron Lords podcast, or as I call it, the Breakfast Club of gaming. That's the closest equivalent that I could probably make from the entertainment world. So how has it started and who's involved in it?
All right, so it's myself, Lord Cognito. I'm the host. Then we have, again, my cool friends, actually one of my best friends from the third grade, Lord Sovereign, and he's on it. And then Lord King, who is absolutely the most entertaining person I know. He's literally the funniest dude I know since we were kids. So that's my cousin, you know what I'm saying? But he's been such an influence on my gaming history because if you grew up in New York, what you realize, there was a heavy import scene from the Japanese side. So, for example, when Super Nintendo came out, it was the Super Famicom in Japan, but it came out actually a year before it came to the States. So King David would be the guy who would go get these imports and tell me, hey, this is going to be the new Super Nintendo. And this would be like downtown Canal Street. The import scene was bubbling. So I was at the time wasn't, I wasn't financially in a good space. I was young. I wasn't making a lot of money, but he would get all that stuff. Neo Geo, Turbo Graphics, So I would get to preview the next generation before it came out. So he's critical for that, and then obviously it's Lord Attic, who's from West Virginia. And to be honest, if it wasn't for Attic, I wouldn't have been a content creator because, as an older gentleman, I'm like, I didn't get it. I didn't get what podcasting was. I didn't get, what it is. And this was a kid I used to, I was a friend of a friend who used to be in Xbox Live party chats. We'd play games. I play sports games, or I play Destiny and stuff like that. And he was very opinionated. And I was like, I like him. We don't agree a lot, but he's very passionate. And yeah, from that point on, we started talking. He was like, we should do a podcast. And I'm like, well, why would anyone want to listen to anyone talk for any length amount of time? So he's like, no, bro, I'm telling you. He's like, I think you would be good. So in the beginning, it became, you started, I'll guess just to kind of see what's going on. I ain't gonna lie, Justin, like the passion started. And, you get your
It
first
just clicked.
bro, you just click and you just get your first guest and you really start to get that synergy. And then for me, he said, I think you should host it now because clearly you have, the passion and guests gravitate towards you. And then with me being a sports guy, I kind of put my own spin on it. I bring the energy. I kind of like
It's
Chicago
like more
Bulls.
PTI it,
Yeah, yeah. Like that whole vibe, like kind of like, and now when I do the introductions, like when you come in the realm, I want to make you feel at home. We're going to talk about your gaming history, everything that's going on. And from that point on, it slowly started to take off.
Amazing. So, what are some of the typical discussions or some past guests? Tell us a little about the show.
Yeah, so pretty much again, for lifelong friends, we pretty much want to celebrate content creators, developers, any luminaries in the industries, whether it be voice actors, but as far as past guests, man, we've had some big ones. This year specifically, we actually had Peter Moore in the realm, from the head of Sega, the head of Xbox, also was the head of the LFC, Liverpool Football Club, which was an awesome story just to hear his journey from a non-gaming background to sales to marketing, and then boom, we've had on so many luminaries. We've had actually Ryan McCaffrey from IGN, game developers like Jake Solomon, the creator of the Series X and Series S, Jason Ronald. Basically, we want to put a spotlight because I think the issue is just that a lot of gamers, we think we know everything. Oh, these developers are lazy. Oh, the game was terrible, or what happened?
Why didn't they fix that? Like, it's so easy, right?
So you're so right. And it's like what you realize is the actual journey and the decisions that were made, why, and some things we had no idea that became roadblocks. And also, like how you asked me about my gaming history, you'd be surprised. Sometimes we're in your little bubble where you think, just you and your crew were playing games, you're so passionate. But there's people in other countries kind of doing the same thing at the same time, but no one knows each other kind of thing. Or you realize, hey, we may have crossed paths at one point. So yeah, those are the fun stories. And as far as your other question, we talk about the latest topics in the industry. What's going on? Oh wow, Last of Us got canceled. The factions got canceled. Oh wow, this company, Microsoft acquired Activision Blizzard King. What are the ramifications of that? How does that mean? Then sometimes we get esports lawyers on tell us about esports, this growing scene and what's happening, or just the legal aspect of gaming. And it's educational, but we also try to make it entertaining, fun. And that's what it's about, bro. At the end of the day, it's about having fun. Games are about having fun. And that's what we try to resonate.
Definitely. I think that's one of the things as someone who's watched it and, as you mentioned, guested on it, is it's fun, it's exciting, it's talking about fun stuff, and it's very lively. But sometimes, as with many of these conversations, when you have people, it sometimes gets a little off track, and you go down one tangent and you're like, oh well, we got to get back. So how does that work? How do you kind of rein it in as the host and get everyone back on the same page?
Yeah, good question. Now, Ireland Podcast tends to be a long form podcast. We have discussions. It's very passionate. I warn people when they come on, we give them a time limit, as far as respecting people's time, because us four can talk and we can debate, and we
It's like
rarely
the
agree.
barbershop, right? Isn't that kind of like, if you saw that's what it is?
Facts. Barbershop, breakfast club kind of feel. And it's passionate because a lot of us kind of stand it. So for my job is get back to the focus, keep the line of discussion on the topic. Now, there's some tangents that happen that are natural, that are absolutely hilarious. And sometimes I have to let that go because I'm like, okay, this is an organic discussion that is really interesting that I didn't see coming. We'll let it go. But then also one thing is respecting the guest's time. The guests we got to respect. And then the second thing, which is big for us, I got pushback from the other lords initially when we started, which was like, hey man, I'm a real spicy talker, and sometimes, the F-bombs would drop. And I'm like, look, let's keep it respectful, because at the end of the day, we may disagree or have strong points, and that's how we may talk offline. But online, we don't want everyone to feel comfortable, and we don't want that situation. We've got positive feedback from executive CEOs, saying, hey, I can listen to the Lords in my car with my kids because I don't have to worry about you guys going off the rails. And then also the thing that people really respect, we'll have our guests that we know are on the complete opposite side of a passionate topic that we may feel about. And they know they can still come on. We could hear their side. We could have maybe a good discussion, discourse and debate, but it's never going to be disrespectful. Like, just, you know what the hell you talking about? And
Yeah.
it's none of that wildness. You know what I'm saying? We just going to have fun and at least hear the other perspectives.
right? It's like a mature debate. It's like, it's a political debate. Yeah, we have different sides, different views on stuff, and we're very passionate about it, but we also respect your passion. And I think that's important. And, that might, as you said, that might be the difference if you're trying to be very brand friendly and trying to be more, PG rated, being able to be in more households without having an R or PG-13 or some rating that takes you out of certain conversations.
Valid point. And that's the thing, right? Because it's like, again, every walk of life, we want you to feel comfortable. And we also want you to know that, you don't have to be, super big time streamer all the time. Yeah, we'll have guests like that. But also, if you're getting started and we say, hey, you know what? This person has something. We think this person will bring an interesting conversation. Or, just saying, you know what? This is something we don't know about. I remember we had an eye doctor on, like a high level eye doctor, and we were talking about the benefits of like getting your eyes
Blue,
checked for gamers, right, and things that you don't even think about.
right? The
On a
blue lens and all that stuff.
there you go, you're on a screen, and then how it translated to VR, how that is. We've had all different forms of life in different spaces. The main thing we care about is that you're passionate about gaming, or at least know about gaming.
So, kind of leading to the next one, what was some, most memorable podcast or show highlight or just guess? Just a couple that you're just like, wow,
Yeah,
I can't believe that's what happened.
man. I mean, so many. I think particularly there was a movement called the Hold the Line movement that the Iron Lord podcast created, initially from man King David. And this was basically during the time, I believe Microsoft acquired Activision Blizzard King. And then they had a kind of, they actually didn't acquire. They were in the process of trying to acquire, but there's a lot of legal snafus and things that were going on with the FTC and
Antitrust for all different countries. Yeah.
Exactly. That the CMA had blocked it. So the internal feeling from the Xbox fan base was basically like, look, this is going to get done, but they weren't sure. There was a lot of trepidation, and he started this rallying cry, and he's like, look, you got to hold the line. It's going to happen. They're going to turn this thing around, and it became such a viral event and galvanized the community that the head of Xbox marketing took on to it, because we had shirts, we had merch with it,
Wow.
the whole bit. It was he wore it at the Xbox showcase. Hold the line, because it seems like internally they felt the same way as far as all the trepidation.
Yeah, I mean, it's like lots of hurdles, millions of dollars in legal fees all across the world, and like, we could do a whole episode on what the speculation of how it's going to change the video game industry from, platform to console to PC to esports, like it touches every single aspect. Cloud game, it's a huge, and that's why it was $70 billion. Like, the price tag fits the magnitude of the transaction.
Absolutely. I mean, it literally dominated our news headlines for a year and a half, and you couldn't escape it because it was almost like a saga. There were so many twists and turns to it, and then all the different regulators and countries that got involved. And what we learned is behind the scenes how both Sony and Microsoft looked at each other. Nintendo in the space, are they considered a third competitor in the space? Are they considered something else? You learn the verbiage. Like, gamers learned that those 2 years through our show, like all the legal aspects of
They
it.
learned what's actually going on in the business wing. The business affairs people finally showed their hand a little.
And we learned so much from you guys. It was so educational, and also the revenue and what actually drives the business. We talked about also esports and things of that nature. The impact of Call of Duty, like, man, how much of a juggernaut it was, and you just learned so much behind the scenes.
Cosmetics and how much these microtransactions really make, and these subscription services, the Xbox Game Pass, where, like you said, because you're disclosing all these numbers and it's all publicly available, smart people can start looking through them and be like, oh, wow, you made $150 million on this, or, you're not really making that much money on this stuff, even though it seems like you are.
Yeah, no, you nailed it. The biggest discovery for me, and shout out to my boy Lord Sovereign, is we start looking at like as far as MAUs and monthly active users, and also the actual revenue. And you start to realize that a lot of this came from these multiplayer game, live service games, as opposed to like the hardcore gamer thinks, hey, my Last of Us, so not saying that these games don't sell well, these single player games, they think those are the high quality, highly reviewed games that translates to revenue. And a lot of times it wasn't the case. We saw things like Minecraft dominating, right? Roblox dominating,
Fortnite.
Fortnite. So to get the hardcore gamer, which is a lot of our audience, they were taken back. It was a wake-up call that, hey, even though this is critically acclaimed, this does not translate to commercial success. And
Right.
what's commercial success sometimes doesn't resonate with the hardcore gamer, but is more popular by the masses. And that's what I think people learn.
Right. And I think it kind of comes to that whole dichotomy in the gaming business where you have the free to play versus, the pay to buy it. Where those kind of games, you pay your $60, you get your download, and maybe there's like a boot, but like that's the existence. But these other games, the Fortnite, the Rocket League, the Roblox, the Minecraft, it's free to play. So once you're in, it's like, oh, well, it's free. So I could spend the 60 or the 100 and, you wake up one day on Marvel Snap and, I never say what I actually spent, but I read a statistic that if you were between 500 to 1,000, that was like kind of the average whale. So
You read a
I was
statistic.
in there, I'm somewhere in that number on mobile gaming between Marvel Snap and Marvel Contest of Champions. But again, that's the reason those are free to play games. Like you play the game, it's like, oh well, now I want to get this champion. It's like, oh, the new card came out, and like if I don't have it, everyone else that I'm playing has it, so I'm at a huge disadvantage because they're just gonna crush me with it. So if you want to be competitive, and that's what those kind of games are with the multiplayer stuff, because you're playing with other people against other people. It's not like you're loading up and you're doing missions, and then like once you're done, you're done. Like it could take you a month or 2 days to do it. Like it's the end is the end. You beat the final boss, and it's like, yay, I did it.
That's it. You did it. You did. But there's no consistent engagement, and you see what those companies want. And I'm glad you mentioned mobile, because that was a wake up call for our audience as well. A lot of people were like, yeah, this is just for Call of Duty. And, again, the acquisition dominated the headlines, but we also realized the value of King and something like a Candy Crush.
Oh, Candy Crush crushes it. Like, oof. I got on this Monopoly game now that like my wife's cousin showed me, and it's like I think they made $100 million last quarter or something scopely off $1.99 dice and buildings in this game, and like
totally, man. Like I said, you learn so much on what really drives the industry and what these companies, executives, and the financial people, what they really are valuing, to also help support some of the things that that the hardcore may like, kind of thing. But yeah, great topics. We had some fantastic guests. We had legal analysts in. We had people that knew what was going on with the CMA in. It was really. I think overall that the ABK will be an inflection point in gaming. And from moving forward on what is actually going on, how the industry is trending forward.
Yeah, I mean they're gonna be the most powerful entity, really, because you like when Disney bought Fox, it was like you're bringing, and Marvel, it's like you're bringing Star Wars and Marvel and Disney, or you're bringing Mickey Mouse and Simpsons together, like you just kind of unified like the two spectrums of pop culture, really. Like,
and sorry, please continue.
Well, I'm saying like it's just that same kind of concept of these. Now it's just taking the Activision Blizzard IP and bringing it into everything that Microsoft has.
Absolutely, and I think too, what was also a big passionate discussion was the whole idea of consolidation, and we got people on both sides of it. Some people were afraid.
I mean, there's gonna be a lot of. I mean, I don't want to say, but there's gonna be a lot of
layoffs. Yeah,
like,
what happens?
There's gonna be a lot of redundancies once you start putting these companies together. You had 4 companies that kind of merging all together that were all around the world. Like, I'm sorry to everyone out there. I'm sure I'm not saying some news that no one is expecting, but that's what happens in mergers and acquisitions. Like, seniority plays in, who's better fit. They look at the numbers. It's like, you were here and you're making this much less, or this much more than this person. Like, can you do a comparable job? Like, it becomes like looking at a balance sheet, and
you're preaching.
It's tough.
You're preaching.
It's tough.
We learn about redundancy. We learn about, again, acquisition. What's why was it under so much scrutiny, right? Obviously the dollar amount. But to your point, the transitionary period, once you now own a company, okay, how does the messaging work? Who gets to do what, in certain cases, and you start to see a lot behind the scenes of the complexities of it, right? It's not just, okay,
Like
we
the
own it and that's it.
politics, right? Like that they would say there's always this pull up politics. And then when you have senior VPs that have been at different companies for decades, and it's like, oh well, this guy's been here too, but like they kind of serving the similar roles. Are they going to be co-heads of the studio? Like, is each studio now going to be different thing? Is Microsoft going to now be like, this is our RPG division, this is our free to play, this is our like, are they going to totally restructure everything?
Right. And then we learned about exclusivity, like games that were made prior to acquisition. What happens, also, with exclusivity, as far as, okay, now that we own you, do we lock this to our subscription service? Do we now add value to it? Or do we say, you know what, we can make more revenue by having Call of Duty everywhere because it's a live service or it has the multiplayer component? You start to learn, and we saw, I don't want to say inconsistency, but we saw the reasoning behind why they made different decisions. Oh, Starfield, no, this is going to be ours. This is single player. We want to drive the service, this, that kind of thing. Whereas Minecraft, hey, you know what? We'll put that everywhere. It's such a huge, legacy kind of title. We feel restricting it to our ecosystem and making a walled garden wouldn't be the best approach. We also learned how much Sony really, prior to acquisition, how much Sony's revenue was for it existing on the platform and how much of a driver that was for a lot of their multiplayer. So again, that was, man, I would say that was the biggest guest fly. the Microsoft, the Activision Blizzard King acquisition. Oh boy, it dominated the headlines for a while.
I mean, I think it's going to be dominating the headlines for the foreseeable future as we see releases, how they handle releases. It's BlizzCon and become this huge Microsoft mania where it's like now Microsoft is putting on the show, and it's like, where does Xbox become just the preferred dominant platform because they have everything and maybe they have more exclusive, like maybe you could play Minecraft everywhere, but the Xbox version comes with extra stuff, or like like a couple extra skins if you download it through Xbox Pass or whatever. Like these other things that, again, it's not necessarily going to be like, okay, but like if I'm deciding between Xbox or PlayStation, knowing that being an Xbox subscriber and getting Xbox Game Pass is going to give me all this other stuff, same price, really. Like,
right. And to your point, we're thinking even about the marketing, which is like, you go to the esports event. Now, does that change? Is it an Xbox controller there, that the gamers are using? What's the incentives to get them in the base? Do they, look at the Series S and say, you know what, let's make this publicly known as the home of Call of Duty? You have maybe Call of Duty branding and on the Series
So I'm
S.
saying special things that you get just by using that.
Exactly. And then just think about the logic of a person who would be the casual gamer who say they just buy Call of Duty, they just buy 2K or Madden every year. And now you find out, wait a minute, if I buy a Series S or Series X and I get Game Pass, I have all of these games at launch and I don't have to spend the $70 and the system up front. You just play it and you get, you know what I mean? There's so many.
I'm Xbox, it just pushes you. It's like you don't need both if you only like, this just doesn't necessarily make sense to have both at that point.
Right. And last point is, in reference to the mobile, a lot. I'm not a huge mobile gamer, but I do understand the importance and the revenue and how much of a driver it is. Now that they own that, is it a situation where it's like, oh, by the way, there's Game Pass because these phones are so powerful, right? You can play mobile versions of.
We're gonna make a Halo mobile.
Exactly. And we know Call of Duty mobile exists. And there's so many possibilities here of where it goes. Just very fascinating, interesting stuff. We love to have these type of topics on there because it really tries to show where the game is going. Even AI right now, that's a hot button for us right now. AI is big right now. Using AI voices. I believe there's this game called The Finals right now, fully AI voiced kind of thing. And it's taken off. And then, there's people that are like, hey, the ethical side, whatever. And then there's other people that say the developer side, hey, this is making development easier. This is making these games come out fast. It's such a good, talking point kind of.
And, we actually had a pretty well-known voiceover person on a recent episode. So I know she has her thoughts on AI trying to replace her as, voicing characters. And, again, it's what with the game development, like using it for coding, like is it going to save you hundreds of man hours, saving you a lot of money? But does that mean now there's less need for coders and develop people to do it because we don't need to pay you to do it if the AI is going to do it 10 times faster for a fraction of the cost? So it's
We're in good
tough.
time. We're in interesting times, man. Right? Interesting times that we get to see. So these are the like how we just vibing right now. Like these are some of the discussions we have, and you know we get people who are very opinionated, trying to see both sides of it, but ultimately just have some fun with it, man. Because this is gaming, and this is our passion.
Amazing. So I know the Lords attend many gaming events and conferences. So what do you like most about attending them? And what are some of your favorite events or conferences?
All right, so true story, Lord Justin. True story. As much as people love me and the Lords for podcasting, and that's a passion. Don't get me wrong, but there is something in me about going to a live event, putting me, give me a microphone. I put the microphone in your face and I say, "Hey, Justin, tell me about this game you're making. What's going on?" To me, it's almost like, as a guy who loves hip hop and music, it's almost going to a convention is almost like getting the behind the scene
Like getting
listening
in the
party,
streets, right? You're
getting
like
to
in
the
the
streets.
streets.
Like right before no one knows about you. You're an undiscovered artist, right? I remember, seeing Fortnite. I remember seeing Kingdom Come Deliverance and people not realizing what it was. And these things just take off. I remember we interviewed, I never forget, Lord, give me that. One of my writers was like, there's this game called Fall Guys. I'm telling you, it's gonna pop. It's gonna be a hit. So I go over there and I look at it, I'm like, this? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I'm telling
You
you.
got politicians playing Fall Guys,
Bro,
little U.S. senators.
same thing, that Among Us. So it's the beauty of seeing something that could be a phenomenon in its early stages. No one knows it. It's like an independent artist. Hey, listen to my album, listen to my demo, kind of thing. So we hit the streets. We go to the E3s. We go to the PAX Easts. We go to the PAX West. One of the big goals will be Tokyo Game Show, going out there just to see what that's about in the Japanese culture and the scene there. But for me, going to the conventions, one, that hand-to-hand aspect of dealing with the developer, getting the information before everyone. The access, obviously, as a media outlet is really appreciated. You get views, you get a lot of traffic.
Thanks for the media pass, everyone.
Thank you for the media pass. And then, obviously people get exposure to a game that they say, wait a minute, that looks cool. I like this game. Wow, I got my eye on this, right? So the relationship works, but we get the coverage, but they also get, eyes on that. And I think for me, the last thing, even though, E3 is canceled, but the Summer Game Fest, the PAX and stuff like that,
GDC,
the event, the Oscars levels, presentation, the coming on stage announcing, hey, these are the gigs, being in the crowd for those moments, and the camaraderie of also networking. There's so many opportunities, you come across with just meeting publishers, developers, advertisers, things of that nature. So I personally feel it's a benefit to get out your comfort zone, go to the events, and it can really help your brand. I feel the Lords really took off when we implemented going to the PAX East. PAX East was huge for us. We really took off. I remember seeing Kingdom Come Deliverance, a lot of games, a lot of developers, Microsoft, Sony. We covered, I believe Days Gone before it came out. It was like a zombie game from Sony. Being at the Nintendo events, Splatoon for the first time, and that kind of stuff. And seeing the Nintendo Switch for the first time and say, wait a minute, they may have something here, portability.
Like, this is going to make them a competitor now.
Yes, Nintendo's back, hardware for the first time, the Series X, the Series S. So being at an event for the Lords has been extremely beneficial for our brand, our podcasting.
Amazing. Definitely seeing you guys at some. It's always fun to see you. You guys really kind of steal the show in the conference center. And that was kind of how I kind of got drawn to you at the beginning. I kind of just saw this group of dudes just kind of swarming, exactly rocking their gold shiny shirts, and that energy is kind of what entertainment's about. So definitely love seeing you guys doing all that
Appreciate
stuff.
Appreciate it.
So yeah, kind of, what do you like most about hosting the podcast?
So hosting the podcast, it's, again, the thing I think is the most fun. I love what I'm known for is my introductions, right? Introducing, the Lord, and I'll go through your accolades, me doing the research behind the scenes. What have you done? Why you're an interesting person for the platform, making you feel comfortable. What I do like about it is also just vibing with the Lords, right? It's like you said, barbershop, right? So our schedules, this is basically the origin of it also, is that, growing up in the South Bronx, all of us, basically my house was a safe spot for people to get off the street. Hey, you going through some stuff? Yo, come over here. Let's play some Madden. Let's bug out. You know what I'm saying? And get you out of that. So in my opinion, that's why I shout out Mama Cognito. We helped a lot of people. And my house every Saturday became the safe haven for the kids in the neighborhood to play games. So Iron On Podcast is an extension of that. It is like a group of friends in front of the camera, in front of the mic. We catching up on the week. And the cool thing about us is we're genuine friends. Like, it's not a put together thing. Like, we all know each other. We all travel together. And I think the fun thing is catching up with your brothers and wanting to know, okay, how does he feel about this, Tom? Like, what's he really think? I've been known to push buttons to get the conversation going sometimes. I got to learn when to peel back sometimes and let them speak. And sometimes it's like, yo, all right, Justin's having a moment right now. Let him cook. Let him cook. He's on fire. Even if I agree, disagree, and also I forgot the biggest important thing. I think the thing that separates us is, no disrespect to any other content creator, as you get bigger, it gets harder to track the super chats, the engagement, the people just wanting to talk to you and reach out
Without commenting on what you're saying.
And commenting, right? So we have this rule that it gets us in trouble with show length, but we read every comment, super chat, Patreon, anyone that wants to involve themselves, we read it, every single one. So they feel connected. They know they are part of this mission, this journey, and we respect their time. So I think that's huge for us because people feel they can influence the show. And sometimes they do with funny comments or, just, hey, questions and stuff like that. People have put us in weird scenarios in these little kind of games. Imagine if this happened. What do you do if da 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 da? You guys all have to agree to save the world. Funny scenarios, like just stuff like that. It's cool.
It's amazing. So, what's the hardest part about it?
Consistency.
Right, that's the number.
Yeah, one of the hardest things for us is we had to come up with a day. Right, Sunday was the only day that worked. And we were told notoriously, hey, that's not a good day.
Yeah, I mean, it's Sunday football. It's Sunday's not like...
Bro, we've had guests cancel on us like, yo, that's Sunday football, fan. And I get it. I get it. We talked
right? In football. We were in the off season. We were in the summer.
Bro, maybe catch you in the summertime with the off season, and then we have you as a guest. We totally get it. And then, obviously, some executives say, hey, they're with their families that on the weekend. They don't necessarily want to come on a podcast. So we had to commit to Sunday, commit to a time frame. At one point, we did bend the knee to NFL football at 1 o'clock during football season. We've gotten to the point now that we can absorb it, and then we'll get retainership after that. But I think the hardest part is, one, the consistency. The first 20 episodes, I would say, do about 10 episodes to see if you really enjoyed it, if you're passionate about it. With us, we didn't have the engagement, but we were having fun. So I'm like, okay, let's stick with it. The hardest part is not seeing the initial reward, like the chat is low. I mean, I remember there'd be 8 people in the chat. You call the homie up, like, bro, you my man, you know me, we do the why you wasn't in the chat today. Like you get emotional, you get to get out your feelings, right? Because it's like you want to see some return in this investment you're doing. But I think once we saw that started to motivate us a little bit. And I think the main thing I would say is consistency. And I would say the hardest thing is kind of like maintaining the vision of what you're doing, maintaining, okay, why am I doing this? Why are we here? Not getting off track with other stuff and superficial stuff. So yeah, that's probably the main thing. And just make sure everybody's good, man. Everybody checking in on everybody, make sure everybody's good during this journey we have it.
Definitely. So what tips do you have for aspiring podcasters, people that are trying to get in on and do this?
Be yourself. Don't try to imitate someone else. We all are influenced. I was influenced by a lot of people, right? But I'll tell you a funny story. I remember, obviously, I'm known for these bombastic introductions of people. And I remember it's a natural instinct to look at the comment section after a show, right? You're going to get negative feedback from somebody. You gotta learn to process that and see, okay, is this legitimate criticism or is this person just being
Yeah, it's
ridiculous
just the
and being a
internet
jerk?
trolls,
Is
right?
he trolling, right? And it takes a while because again, I'm from the South Bronx. Like you can't just say anything to me. Like you know what I mean?
Right on
Like
the internet,
you know, and you learn that people have a lot of toughness behind the keyboard. So I'm
Mhm.
like, all right. But the reality, there was one comment I never forget. Shout out to Attic because he helped me with this to solve. Okay, pretty much what happened was the guy was like, we had like our first big content creator on. And it was a huge networking opportunity because like their audience get to see us, we have them, and like, okay, who are the lords? So I go through my spiel, I introduce, I do the thing, and the guests actually loved it, had a great time. There was a comment that was like, I'm not going to say the content creator name, but the content was like, look, man, Justin, you're cool, but don't ever go on these guys' show. This stuff, this little thing is corny or whatever it was. And the intro, like they ripped the intro, and I was like, man, I took it hard, bro. So I remember like I went to Attic, I went to Cam, like, yo, I think I should peel back on the intros. And they were like, no. They were like, that's what makes you you. It's almost like the Chicago Bulls of the 90s. And now, the starting, like they were like, you bring a flair to it. Don't stop that part. So from that point, I was kind of conservative with the intros, but then from after that point, prior to that point I was concerned, but after that point, I went a little extra and it actually motivated. And then people was like, hey, I'm arguably, not to brag, but arguably considered one of the best hosts or introducers in the podcast, in the gaming podcast scene, because people really feel good. Like having Peter Moore, Jason Ronald, luminaries in the industry, when I introduced them. And I've had people stop me and say, look, can we record that? And you can send that to my bosses about how great I am. That kind of, and it makes me feel good. It makes them feel good. And I said, I kind of resonated with that. So yeah, those are some of like the tougher times, so to speak.
Right, that's definitely a lot. Dealing with a lot of the creators and influencers, like you can't look at the negative comments. I was working with this really big rapper, and it's like he would just sit on his phone looking at all the negative stuff. It's like the funniest thing, and I always say it's like if these people were in front of you, they would be like, "Oh, I love you so much. Please take a picture with me." Like, oh, they would tell everyone in the world the time they met you. But
Mm-hmm.
they're all tough guys on the internet, and they all be screaming and saying everything that they never would otherwise.
Exactly. We for the air, there's certain things you would never do it for place to place, and that you got to make that separation with the internet. And last piece of advice I do want to say is that networking, and again, the guy that's a little older, you know, I wasn't used to not that you're not used to someone saying no, I won't come on your show, but it was one of those things where like trying to secure guests that was a challenge in the beginning, right? And sometimes we all want to shoot for the stars. I always advise shoot your shot. You want big time superstar, shoot your shot. You'll be surprised. There's times when you think you have a chance in hell, and someone will respond to that email that you sent to the publicist or the media team. Sometimes using social media to say, "Hey, man, it would be my dream to have you on in the realm of the Lords. It would be an honor." Some of our biggest interviews came through as a result of that. Just literally shooting the shot or talking to the right people who represent them. And don't get mad by the rejection short term. Keep growing, keep grinding, keep also working with people of your size, people lower than you. Don't get too Hollywood or yourself where you don't want to work with any, because I've seen people do that and then they don't have any guests. They're frustrated, but they're not even working with their own peers or their contemporaries or people that can help them. And I think one of the advantages of the Lords is we don't play the politic game. If you're interesting, and we feel you have a good story, you come on. And there's times where guests that we really wanted, we didn't have on in the beginning, and we ended up getting them 2-3 years later. And you go, yo, look how far we came. Wow, couldn't believe that happened. And we have those magical moments.
Right, or it's like you want someone, but it's like let me do a couple other ones, show them who else I have, and then I could reach out to them.
Build that resume. And then what I do, tip, I give y'all some game, like, hey, send a link with, hey, this is our exclusive interview playlist. These is the people we've had on. So people get a format, because a lot of times people don't know you, right? So they're like, yo, what am I getting into? Kind of thing. Hey, this is our format. Be very clear and concise what your goal is when you send out those type of, emails to request guests and things of that nature. And you'd be surprised, man. It goes a long way.
Definitely. So this was amazing. So to kind of like bring this towards the end, what's the future for the Islands podcast and the Lords of Gaming Network? I know you
Yeah.
have some interesting stuff going on with our network prediction. So shout out to them.
Shout
But
out to
what's
Preediction.
the future for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, at some point, we had to be real about the aspect of monetization and doing this. Look, a lot of people, we come from full-time jobs and jumping into space with a passion, right? But to be honest, the passion is really like it doesn't feel like work. So what's the long term? The long term goal is obviously to legitimize. We turned into an LLC, right? We got that going, becoming a company. The other thing, as well as continuing to grow in the space as far as revenue, advertising, continue to get more bigger guests on, but to be able to do this full time. So you put the 9 to 5 away and you really are able to commit. I think that is tremendous. That's a tremendous transition if that's a long-term goal for you. As far as Lords of Gaming Network, the site, continue to grow as a media outlet, continue to, some of our highlights is getting on Open Critic, Metacritic, that kind of stuff, being recognized as a legitimate source of news where you can go to and developers can come to and feel comfortable working out with the PR people. So long term, the vision is to grow it and make this thing an absolute beast, if you can, where we, the Lords, are known, as this gaming kind of media conglomerate and continue to grow it and,
Right, that you
and
guys
give.
can make or break games, right? Isn't that the key? Like Cisco and
Yes,
Ebert, it's like their thumbs up or thumbs down can make or break stuff, and to have that kind of ability for pop culture to be able to give a real opinion that's not biased, where it's like, because that's the problem. It's like you don't want to offend anyone in these industries that are very small and very tight knit, and everyone knows everyone, and people hold grudges because people are people, and people can't, and it sucks, but people say business is business, but people are people. And
absolutely.
sometimes you're being a person might cloud how you might handle a business situation. And I
Mm-hmm.
will, I'm not going to say I'm not, guilty of those things in my day as well. You try not to let emotions impact stuff, but people
Yeah.
are people, right?
You nailed it. It's having that separation and still give that honest opinion, regardless to the relationships. But at the same time, I think the key is regardless if you like or dislike something, being respectful. It's how you say it. Because yeah, obviously we have relationships as well, but sometimes you may love the developer, you may love the publisher, right? You get the game or you get the review code, you would talk about it on a platform, like, oh, this ain't it, right? But it's how you say it, right? Yo, this studio should blow up. They should fire it all. You see what I'm
Like,
saying?
what were these guys thinking when
What
they
were they
made
thinking?
this?
Exactly. It's how you present because that affects. Well, like people are human. There's people that work hours and upon hours. Sometimes you don't know the full story on how something came to a bad result. Not justifying it, but at the same time, still also maintaining that journalistic integrity to say, okay, you know what? We may love you personally, this ain't it, or hey, the opposite, right? So it's how you say things. And one thing that I think I'm very proudful about Iron Lord Podcast and Lords of Gaming Network is I have been told internally from executives that listen to our show and say if the lords are not feeling it or whatever, we know it's legit. We know it's coming from a place of realism, right? Because they're gonna get and that audience trusts them. Their audience knows, hey, the Lord said that it's legit. All right, we're gonna mess with that product. We're gonna, hey, prediction. Okay, we're on with them because if the Lord's co-sign it, we know it's official because we built that representation, that reputation of keeping it real, that reputation of keeping it real. So I think that's big for us. And people see that genuineness. And even when we cross paths with people like, hey, man, they took the time out, whether they're big or small, to stop interviews, say our talk. I had a developer come up to me and say, you don't realize what you did by just even the way you presented. You gave critical feedback but it helped our development team. And then they went and they took off and they became something else. Hearing those kind of stories really resonates. And the last thing I say is seeing my peers, man, seeing other people in the space that you've seen grind and work hard. Hip hop game is a fan of mine and I'm a fan of his, big, we do a lot of work together. Just seeing other people in the space because at the end of the day, everybody thinks they got to be the one. You know what I'm saying? Kind of thing. But sometimes it's about working together and pulling all, and we all lift each other up to get to that space. So yeah, absolutely. Those are some of the things
100%
that.
agree on that. So, I like to try to end each episode with my 3 questions. So, what's
Ooh,
your favorite game to watch?
favorite game to watch. It would probably be Tekken. I'm big into
Mm,
Evo. Tekken 8 coming out very soon. Yeah, Tekken, that's my heart. I was
mm.
before the competitive esports scene, Cog was a competitive Tekken player, and I was very good. So I would go to the Chinatown fairs. I would go compete against the best players in the world. So I look at these kids now. I'm like, man, I was a generation too late. I
Right.
wish I could do this Evo. I wish I could be more like. And I watch these kids, man, and they're so good. Nee and all these guys, and just new upcomers on the scene, how they master these characters, the frame data, and all that stuff. It's such a complexity to the fighting game scene now that I love to
Mhm.
watch it. So yeah, that Tekken would be number one to watch.
So, what's your favorite game to play?
Ooh.
I knew these were going to be tough for you.
All right, favorite game. So I'm gonna preface this like this is probably the only game I'd be able to play because I love so many games. So my fallback is always Destiny by Bungie because
Okay.
the shooting feels so good. These are the creators of Halo. It's live service. I could play with my friends. We could do cooperative fire team, 3 players. And I think one of my favorite activities in Destiny is this thing called the raids, 6-player activities. The game does not hold your hand. You do not know what's going on. We have to puzzle solve together. It may cause some arguments like, Justin, stand on the plate. Why didn't you do it? And we all fail. You know what I'm saying? But when you beat this challenging content, it's some of the most reward. You felt like you've been through Vietnam with your man. Y'all veterans. Like, y'all been
Like,
through it.
yo,
You know
we
what I'm
dodged, we
saying?
survived something here.
I've got friends on my friend list to this day, like that are either now part of Lords of Gaming.net and stuff like that because of games like Destiny. And I'm like, yo, that's my brother. You have my back. You saved it. We didn't wipe on the run. Like, yeah, that kind of energy. So yeah, Destiny 2. I'm a huge Destiny fan, but so Destiny would be there.
Amazing. Who's your favorite video game character?
Ooh, that is good. I never asked that. Video game characters. So I would probably put it. I would start probably go with the Sega era because I am a Sega kid. That's tough, man. I love so many characters. Let me see. I guess I could kind of. Nah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go deep. I'm gonna say my favorite game character is Shepard from Mass Effect. Because
Okay.
you put your personal feelings into this character. You control the relationships, whether he goes Paragon or Renegade. And it's one of the most replayable single player games because of all the choices that you make. And the fact it was one of the first games that when you played the first game, the choices that you made carried over into the second game. People who lived
Wow.
or died carried over into the second and the third game. So
Wow.
Mass Effect was such a unique game for its time. I think I did a presentation on that game in front of a crowd about why it's arguably one of the greatest games of all time. And I broke it down. I had my slideshows. I had my PowerPoint. I was like, "This is
It's
what."
like, do you agree? Dot, dot,
Yeah,
dot.
I was in my bag, but people came around. They were like, "Bro, you're right for its time." So Shepard, the game character, yeah. Shout out to BioWare. That was an ambitious project they made.
Okay, well, those are some amazing answers. So, thank you so much for joining us. This was as entertaining as I imagined. So, tell everybody where they can connect with you and check what you guys are all working on.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me in the realm, Lord Justin. Appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. Obviously, I'm at Lord Cognito on Twitter, mostly on Twitter a lot, but we're on TikTok, Iron Lords Podcast. YouTube is Iron Lords Podcast. Instagram, Iron Lords Podcast. Make sure you support this site if anyone's listening. Lordsofgaming.net. Some great news articles, opinion pieces, game reviews, walkthroughs, tips. We're independent and we really have extreme talent there, and all that really helps us drive us to these conventions and being a reputable media brand and stuff like that. And obviously the podcast is every Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern, on Iron Lord Podcast YouTube channel. Also, if you don't want to watch the video, we're on Spotify, we're on SoundCloud, you name it, we're on it. Iron Lords, LORDS podcast. Go check us out.
Yes, sir. Make sure to tune in on Sunday. You have football on one screen and the Iron Lords on the other, right? They say everyone's on 2.5 screen average. So, that's your second or third screen. So,
Yeah, and if you're religious, every Sunday is the Lord's Day.
yes, sir. The Lord's
Come
Day. The
hang out in
Lords
the
get
congregation.
together and they talk about Microsoft. So
Absolutely.
thanks everybody for tuning in, and make sure to follow me on Twitter, Justin JESQ, and check Apple Podcasts for all our past episodes, and check us on YouTube at Justin JESQ, as now we're starting to put out all these great videos, so make sure you check them all out.
Woo, JMJ in the building, my man. Absolute pleasure, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.